Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, saying thank you is not enough. I have to explain you why this honor is so important for the Winds of Hope Foundation and for all the people we try to help. Very often with the director of the foundation, Philippe Ratle, we feel extremely lonely because we care for neglected sufferings. Sufferings that nobody knows about. And we have to go deeper into the explanation of how things that are seeming completely impossible in terms of suffering can really happen. So to put into light the NOMA sickness and the work that we are doing also with other NGOs since 14 years, is extremely important and can put a lot of emphasis into the solutions that we are trying to implement in this world. You know, you've heard in the introduction about the balloon flight around the world, and actually it all started there. Why that? Well, when you fly in a balloon around the world, very often at high altitude, you don't see what happens underneath. You are pushed by the winds, you are in contact with the forces of nature and with the beauties of nature. Underneath, it's too low to see what actually nobody would like to see. Poverty, devastation, natural catastrophes, sufferings, tortures. Well, actually, all the things that human beings manage to do when they lose their humanity. Poverty is probably something that has entered into the habits because we believe that if we have rich people, we normally have also poor people. But what is so incredible is the contrast. And when you have a few miles between the stock exchange market of Mumbai and the slums, you really wonder what human beings are thinking about. But you don't know it when you fly. And you continue with the clouds, you continue with the stars, you continue with the sun. But the people underneath also continue in their sufferings. These women here are not paid to clean the street. These women are desperately trying to find food for the children. When you land after a flight like that, it's clear that you have achieved your dream, but you have flown over people whose only dream is to be able to survive in a decent way. And you feel that suddenly you have a responsibility, because you know, but you can also act. When you're everywhere in the media, it would be stupid to come back and say, well, I broke all the records. It was the longest flight ever. We flew around the world. This is not so important. Actually, people maybe don't expect it from you, but you have the responsibility to do something. And probably the moment, for me, that was the key moment, was when the capsule of my balloon was brought to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum in Washington, together with the Spirit of St. Louis of Charles Lindbergh, the X-1 of Chuck Yeager, the Wright brothers flyer, and the capsule of Apollo 11. It was 6 months before the end of the millennium. And I had the impression that everything had been done. The Earth had been explored, had been conquered, even to the moon. So what is left for exploration? What is left for pioneering spirit? What is left for the imagination and curiosity of human being? Well, it became obvious for me that there is a lot of things left. Not to conquer, but to make better. And maybe the thing we have to make better in the 21st century is about the quality of life. Human rights, fighting poverty, better governance on this planet, medical research, sustainability, renewable energies, cleaner technologies. And in that moment, I decided to take at least 2 of these challenges. One is the renewable energy issue. Because very often when we speak about protection of the environment, it's boring and expensive. When we speak about industry, who provides us our quality of life, it's polluting. And there was never a link between the two that could bring a solution until some startups and labs and universities started to bring what we call now the clean technologies, the technologies that can, at the same time, protect the environment and create jobs by producing and bringing on the market energy-saving technologies that can help us to reduce the waste of natural resources in our world. And what better way to promote it than an airplane that could fly on solar power day and night, a flying laboratory, bringing a demonstration of the best electrical motors, best batteries, best carbon fiber light structures, best insulation materials, lighting systems that could be used everywhere, in cars, in building houses, in everything we deal with in our daily life. Solar Impulse is actually finishing its trip across America. We started with my fellow partner and pilot, André Borschberg, in California, and the plane landed 2.5 days ago in Washington. The last leg will be to New York. This is, I would like to say, a contribution to the people who have something, the contribution to the people who have technology, but who would need better technologies to protect the natural resources of our planet and demonstrate it in a spectacular way. Now there is the other part, which is actually the part for the one who have nothing, not even any technology to help them to live. And this is the Winds of Hope Foundation that is awarded today. If I show you this slide with some partners written on it, like the Mirabeau Bank, Victorinox, Regula and Freddie Leonhardt Foundation and Breitling, it's because I want to really emphasize something. The award that Winds of Hope is receiving today goes 100% to the field actions, to Africa. Because all these partners here are paying for all the administrative costs. It's a formula we have established to bring trust, confidence to the people who support us and help us. It means that all the website, press release, even the roundtables with a specialist of NOMA are entirely paid by partners. And the contribution of the Nobel BioCare Foundation, will go entirely for the actions on the field. And what are the actions on the field? Well, you know, beyond poverty, beyond malnutrition, there are a lot of things that most of the people ignore. This is a normal picture of a normal child in Africa. The problem is that the lack of hygiene and the malnutrition brings a deficit in the immune response. A little bit like AIDS, but on a smaller scale. It means that if the immune responses of the child decrease, some infections in the mouth, especially in the gums, can degenerate in the face. The first symptom that usually is always missed is an oedema of the face. It's when the bacteria, not specific bacteria, normal bacteria from the mouth, starts to proliferate and invade the face. At this stage of the oedema, you can put $1 or $2 of antibiotic, very classical antibiotic therapy, and you stop the sickness. The problem is that the child who arrives with this oedema usually is diagnosed completely wrong. It's a kick of a goat. It's a hole in the tooth. It's a sinusitis. Well, it's everything but NOMA in the mind of people who don't even know what is NOMA. And when they know what it is, they believe it's a malediction and there is nothing to do. So they do nothing. And what is the next step? The next step is the piece of oedema who gets necrotic and falls off. At this stage, it's too late for prevention, it's too late for therapy. It's unfortunately too early for surgery because this is not the ultimate phase. The ultimate phase is when the piece falls off completely with the bones and leaves a hole that disfigures completely the child. And this is even too early to act, because then you have the scars who retract all the tissues, all the bones, arriving to a complete handicap of the child for eating, for breathing, for speaking. Can you imagine that the World Health Organization reckons there is between 50,000 and 100,000 new cases every year? And almost nobody knows it. Now, it's clear that there are three ways to stop a sickness like this. One is to feed Africa, which is impossible for a small foundation, which is impossible for a government, which is even impossible for humankind, mostly for political reasons, mainly because of corruption, more than production of food, because the production of food is usually enough. But the corruption and the speculation prevents the population to have access to it. The other way would be the secondary prevention, if the primary prevention doesn't work. And this is what we want to work on. That means to be able to help the local population to have the diagnosis of that sickness early enough, when the $2 of antibiotic are still the good solution. And for this, we have established a lot of work in 6 countries: Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, Benin, Togo, Senegal. In these countries, we work at high level with the local authorities, with the Minister of Health, with the President of the country, trying to teach health agents, midwives, nurses, doctors, to know what is the first action when they see a case of NOMA. And because we don't have a huge infrastructure, with $100,000, we can work for more than 1 year in a country for a national program. The first started in Niger and was a huge success. Now, of course, you also have to work with the local populations, explain them what we're doing and what they should do when we leave. Fortunately for this, there are also other NGOs who are extremely efficient. And this network of NGOs on the field managed to cover quite well these countries. But you have to go with their culture. You have to go with their traditions. For example, when you learn that tradi practitioners usually give treatments that are completely useless, you should never tell them what you do is useless, because you'll have them against you, and they will be your enemies on the field. So we had to integrate the tradi practitioners into the teaching of the local populations. And we took them with us as teachers, as instructors for the nurses and the health agents. And we just told them, there are other type of medications you could give that are quite efficient. It's called antibiotic. But actually, you can give them yourself. And when they see the result, they start to do it. Of course, it's also very important to inform at a high level, not only locally with the parents and in the villages, but with the media. Most of our trips to Africa have been covered by journalists, making some documentaries, making some reports, because the goal, of course, is to raise funds in order to be more efficient on the field, and to be more efficient also on the political level. I believe that one of the greatest success we had on the political level started last year, when the delegate of the United Nations for the Rights to Food has managed to establish in the Human Rights Council that NOMA was an aggression against human rights. And since that moment, WHO is obliged to consider it as a real case and not just as an anecdote. And from a sickness that has been ignored for years, NOMA might be in a few days officially recognized as a neglected sickness, which obliges the governments to act. So probably after 15 years of networking, communication in the media, political action, NOMA will be recognized officially as a sickness that have to be cared of at the highest level of the World Health Organization. For us, of course, it's also a lot of work on the field with ministers and with presidents. That was the second meeting with the president of Niger, Mamadou Tanja, before the government changed. It was fascinating. Why did he want to welcome me? Only because I had flown around the world in a balloon. And I was in his office, he was calling all his staff and saying, hey, you know, these two guys, they have been flying above our country in their balloon, and he was showing pictures and was so happy. And then we told him, Mr. President, if we're here, we're happy to speak 3 minutes about our balloon, but the 57 other minutes we want to speak about NOMA. That was for the first time. And he listened to us. And the second time we met him a year later, he dared to say something he didn't dare to say the first time. He said, do you know that when you came last year, I did not know what was NOMA, and I did not know that there was NOMA in my country. And in between, in the 12 months, he had put NOMA in the top 3 priorities of his country with AIDS and malaria. So there are some possible actions. When I heard that, I said, okay, we can be useful. We're useful because we have a small foundation, because we don't spend a lot of money, because we deal directly to the target, and we can make a difference. And the goal is to make this difference. Of course, if we had brought our actions to fight against huge causes like malaria, tuberculosis, or AIDS, we would be useless because we would be too small. But I believe that our small size is an advantage to fight against a sickness like NOMA. And at the end, I believe that this picture represents our spirit and the spirit we'd like to promote. This is the last picture that I did during the flight around the world with Brian Jones. It's a window of our capsule. It's frozen by the moisture of the night. And on the other side, there is a rising sun. Of course, if you want to reach the rising sun, you have to go through the ice, through this frozen moisture, through these crystals. And you know, in life, a lot of people don't dare to go through the ice to find the light on the other side. A lot of people have learned that it is safer to suffer in the ice they know rather than to take the risk of going through the ice to see what there is on the other side. And this is why I so deeply believe that pioneering spirit is important, exploration spirit, innovation, imagination. We need to encourage people to see behind the ice of their life, to see what there is on the other side, to go beyond the certitudes, to go beyond the obvious, to go beyond the common assumptions, the paradigms, the dogmas. Because actually, a lot of the people who suffer the most in life are people that we don't help to go through the obvious, to go further than what they think is possible. And in that sense, I believe that ballooning is a beautiful example of how to deal with life. Because a balloon is pushed by the winds in directions that we cannot control. A little bit like human beings who have hopes, dreams, targets, objectives, and they are pushed by the winds of life in directions they cannot control. You know, the winds of life, all these events that we get in, all this unpredictability, all these unknown situations. Very often we have these goals, but the life doesn't allow us to reach them, like in a balloon. But in the balloon we learn that if we want to change direction, we have to change altitude, because the atmosphere is made out of several different layers of wind, which all have a different direction. So if we change altitude in a balloon, we can turn left or turn right. And I think in life it's the same. We have to learn to change altitude professionally, psychologically, philosophically, spiritually, of course, also, in order to catch other influences, other visions of the world, other solutions, other strategies that can help us to reorient the trajectory of our life. But for this, to make it really practical, we have to understand how a balloon works. If you want to change altitude in a balloon, you must drop ballast overboard. You must drop sand, water, all the equipment you don't need anymore. Then your balloon is lighter and can climb. If we learn to do this in life, we can be explorers of life, and we can try to be more successful. Because we have a lot of ballast in our life. We have certitudes. We have habits. We have our wish of safety. We have our convictions, exclamation marks, paradigm, dogmas, all these things that keep us prisoners of old ways of thinking. And if we manage to drop this as a ballast, then we can start to climb. And if we do that, what will be the future? The future will never be anymore just one line going in the wrong direction. The future will be made, like in a balloon, with all the possible lines in front of you, at every possible altitude in 3 dimensions. And what is pioneering spirit? Innovation, exploration, entrepreneurship, imagination, curiosity. It is each time we manage to explore this vertical axis, explore all the ways of thinking, all the ways of doing, in order to find the direction and the altitude that corresponds to our goal. In that sense, freedom is not when we manage to do everything we want. Freedom is when we manage to think in every possible direction and take the good direction at the good moment, at the good altitude. This is the spirit that we learn in ballooning. It's the spirit maybe I try to teach in my profession of psychotherapist. It's the spirit of Winds of Hope. And I believe it should be the spirit of all the people who try to make the world a better place by trying to get out of the old habits and the old patterns of thinking to be able to invent a better future. Thank you very much, and good luck to all.